Well, good evening and welcome to our virtual fans forum, supported by our fantastic partners, Ward Hadaway. Big thanks to them. And fantastic to see so many people jumping on already. It's great that you can join us. I know it's not our normal setup, but we are going to have a good night. We're going to try and make the best of it, which I think is what most of us have been doing for the last 12 months. Fingers crossed we're not going to do it for too much longer. But tonight we have club owner Semore Kurdi with us, Director of Rugby Dean Richards, and Executive Director Mick Hogan with us as well. Everybody here at the club, thanks you for all your support, certainly over the last 12 months. Your patience and understanding during this difficult time is really appreciated. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody to say we cannot wait to see you back at Kingston Park as soon as possible. But before we get started with tonight, we'll just have a quick few words from Semore.
Yeah, just want to say thanks to everyone joining in. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us. It is a bit strange talking to a screen. We do miss it when we're all in a big room getting abuse. Hopefully we'll be back there soon. Thanks all and everyone who supported us. It's been a difficult time for everybody and it doesn't go unrecognized, and we are very much appreciative of everybody's kind words to us, to the players, to the patients with the slow reaction to ticketing, to refunds, to cancellations, to information coming out, because we've all been acting and having to do things as we go along. We've tried to project as good as possible, but everybody's patience and kind words has really managed to get us through this difficult period to where we are. And hopefully we're in a very strong place to move on from here. So thanks, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Semore. As you can see, we've been experimenting with some Zoom backgrounds and some filters. Unfortunately for Semore, he's managed to get the filter of Tom Hanks in Castaway stuck on his screen. So we are trying our best to get through that. And one of the other main reasons I'm here tonight is just to try and watch Dean make several attempts to find the leave the meeting button towards the end and count the number of times that he swears before he manages to do that. I think it'll be worth hanging on for, but we shall see. This is how it's going to work. We've been collating your questions over the last couple of weeks. Some of you have been selected to ask them live tonight. We're kind of making a bit of a leap of faith with that, so you will have to bear with us, but we'll try to get you on screen so everybody can see you. Just to ask you a question, you can raise your hand if you could when we come to ask your question and call your name. Raise your hand. We can select you then to appear on screen, and make sure you're unmuted as well, please, because we do have the occasion where, whilst we wouldn't want to hear what some people say, we do want to hear what you do. We've got a live Q&A chat as well. So if you've got any burning questions you want to ask during the evening, you are more than welcome to do that. It'll pop up at the bottom of my screen. It'll pop up on your screen as well. And we will try and get through as many questions as we possibly can. But please, if we don't manage to get to your particular question, go easy on us because we have had a fair few. And it's been recorded. So if you do see yourself come on screen, there is a chance that you'll get yourself on social media across all the Falcons platforms. So please bear that in mind and do not use any offensive language. Mick. Right, we'll crack on. I think everyone will agree that the last 12 months, particularly for sports clubs, for anyone involved in sport, it's been such a trying year. Our very first question is related to that. When crowds are eventually allowed to return, what measures does the club have in place to enter the stadium safely? And I think this is around bar queues, toilets, catering, turnstile, etc. These are going to be obvious problem areas, the question states, and need some pretty major thought before people will feel safe to return. Mick, do you want to take that one?
I will. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. I think it's fair to say as well, Justin, the last time you saw a lineup like the four faces on screen, I think it was during an episode of Crime Watch late last year. So, crack on. Yeah, great first question. Sorry, and Semore, you're the you were the most wanted as well. Right. What have we been doing? Look, there's been a hell of a lot of work gone into this already, and there's a lot more work to come. We're very fortunate that we liaise with a number of regulatory bodies, so not just the local authority, but Premiership Rugby as well, the RFU, even directives coming down from the government. We have seen what's gone on at other venues. There were a number of, small number of test events sort of late last year that did manage to get away, and there was a lot of learnings came from them, and they have been shared. So there's an incredible amount of work gone on so far to make sure that when we are able to open again, we do so in a safe way as possible. And I think the key with all this is the communication. It's the communication from us to make sure to give fans the sort of comfort to know that we've looked at every single aspect of that customer journey, from arriving at Kingston Park all the way through to getting through the turnstiles, getting into your seat, going and getting your food and drink, knowing that the staff, not just our full-time staff, but our student staff, will have undergone rigorous extra training as well. So a lot happened already, a lot more to come. And, please have comfort that when the time is right for fans to return, we will share with you what we've done and what we actually expect from our supporters as well, because some of the onus will be on the supporters. We can do as much as we can, but we need people's buy-in and cooperation.
Thanks, Mick. I think, fingers crossed, most of you will find that really reassuring. Colin wants to know what the financial impact of the stadium being closed has had. Seymour, one for you.
Yeah, it's very difficult. A huge part of the revenues that you need to run a club come from match day attendance and the catering and banqueting and conferencing as well. So it has been a big hit. We've had to make a lot of measures and take early decisive decisions to balance that off. And just in general, not just the stadium being closed, but dealing with everything else around it. I have to say that everybody involved made very large sacrifices very, very quickly. Dean was a massive help, and Dave Thompson was not on here also, but everybody else within management and within the organization assessed the situation very early, and we were able to figure out the gravity of it all and what it really means in regard to the survival of the club. It wasn't necessarily 1 or 2 weeks where everything will be fine again. And everybody spoke to their relative partners and staff members, etc. And I'd like to say every single person involved in the rugby club has made sacrifices and took a large hit personally. And all of our suppliers, all of our sponsors were very patient with us. All our season ticket holders were very patient with us. And we took very strong measures in the very, very early stages. I mean, within, I think, a week of the announcement, Dean had met all the players and they were under no illusion of what's to come. And I think without that, we would have been in trouble. We addressed it very quickly. And when everyone realized it's a fight, we're all in this together and it could be a long term. Because most people thought a month, 2 months, 3 months, we'll be back and running. We didn't realize it'd be 12 months and we're still here and we still don't know what's going to happen. So those sacrifices that were made early are still being made. And sadly, for some of us within the organization, it wasn't enough and we had to make deeper cuts going forward. What it means for the club overall is everybody's pain and suffering and everybody's patience and everybody's commitment to the club means once we do head back towards the new normal, we'll be in a position to build it back up relatively easily. And we're not in any danger, no matter how long this goes on for, because everybody's taking the sacrifice. So the stadium being closed has affected the club, but more it's affected everybody involved in the club equally. And in a way, it's heartening because together we're stronger and together we got through this, we're getting through this. And some very wise people knocked it into my head that we need to do this very quickly and keep it right. And I was probably a bit blinkered and blinded at the beginning and maybe a bit too optimistic, thinking it'd be short term. And some wiser heads and me and Dean and Dave and Mick and got me to really to think about it strongly and take the measures necessary. and it's not my measures, it's how it was described and expressed to everybody else that allowed it to go forward. There was a small backlash at the beginning from the press and media saying, oh, the club's in trouble, the club's doing this. But as it happened, every club had to follow us. But yeah, I mean, to answer the original question is financially it was a bad hit, but we all got through it together.
Okay, you mentioned the word sacrifice there, which is kind of the subject of our third question. And whoever's asked this just says, thank you for the sacrifices and measures you've taken to secure the club's future, in particular Seymour. As we look to the future, which is still, as you've already touched on, really uncertain, how does the outlook for the club and makeup of the playing squad look like going forward? I suppose that's one for Dean.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, from a playing perspective, it's quite interesting. The salary cap changes over the next couple of years. It comes out to 5 million next year, with 2 marquee players and then one marquee player the following year. So the impact upon that, upon players' wages and the amount that players are asking for, it's changed dramatically. We're also not seeing quite as many overseas players in some clubs, and yet in other clubs you'll see a huge amount of South African players that have been brought in, and that's largely down to the economic downfall in South Africa, and a lot of boys wanting to get out of the country and accepting a smaller wage but better opportunities over here and elsewhere in Europe. So it's quite interesting, and it'll, I think, bring everybody down to a far more of a level playing field in the next 2 years. I think it'll take 2 years to settle down. From our point of view, from the playing squad and what it'll look like, I like the squad that we have, and I think, you know, although we've played four out of our 7 games, and sorry, we've won 4 out of our 7 games. You know, there's still scope for improvement, but we've got a lot of young boys coming through, and I think the academy boys that will be coming through this year into the senior academy boys next year gives an idea of the strength and depth that we've got coming through from the academy. So, yeah, it's looking good, and there'll be the usual. There'll be the usual changes from one season to the next, as there always are, but not as many as there have been over the years, and I think we're going to have a pretty strong side next year, but it's the year after and the year after that where I think that we'll really come into our own.
Perfect. Thanks, Dean. Just a reminder as well, if you are invited on to ask a question, Ian Martin we're going to get to next. So Ian, if you can do us a little favour, if you are invited on to ask a question, please raise your hand when we name check you, and then we can get you on. You can ask the question yourself. If we struggle with that, we'll try and I'll ask the question for you. We've got Ian on now. Ian, fire away. You're through to the chats.
People.
Hello. Sorry, I'm very close to the screen. Unbelievable. Anyway, I'd like to ask the panel about the club's vision for the future, and in particular, like how we can build on the major successes of the recent years, like the big one, so that we can grow the fan base.
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that. I think Dean's just sort of probably touched on sort of the vision for the playing squad, and obviously everything we do here at the club is built around playing rugby, and really interesting to hear his thoughts on sort of how the competition is going to go over the next few years, and how I think, you know, we all believe that we're going to prosper because of the strong academy, and you know, he won't say it and I'll say it for him. We have got the best recruiter in the entire league working for us. We're very, very fortunate in Dean. So I think we're in great shape sort of on the field. Off the field, you can't really say more of the same because it won't quite be the same going forward. But you know, we've always said that strong, you know, attendance growth has always been our #1 priority. And when fans are allowed back, I don't see that changing. So we're always going to have those community programs, you know, building the game from the grassroots up, and hopefully converting some of those new participants into becoming lifelong fans of the Falcons. But yeah, when the time is right, we will look to put on the big events. It's not right just now. Hopefully in the future, you know, we can get back to perhaps a game at St James's Park during the season, put in 30, 35, 40,000 fans in there really building the profile of the club. But it has to be at a time when it's commercially right for us, probably for St James's Park as well. I'm confident that we can attract.
Thanks, Mick. That kind of ties in with our next question as well, is if you consider hosting Falcons matches at other stadiums across the North East. So whether that be pre-season or Premiership Cup, any European matches to build a bigger fan base.
Again, it comes down to whether it's commercially viable. Personally, I would like to maintain that we want to get back to just that one big game every year. Now, there may be I think Dean has perhaps had thoughts, and I'll bring him in after I finish talking on pre-season, to perhaps take a game on the road in pre-season. But, we've got to remember as well that Kingston Park's our home. Fans like coming there. We have a certain advantage from playing at home. And it is, it can be costly to take games on the road, particularly when a lot of those costs for us are fixed at Kingston. So, we've got to balance up that commercial edge to it. Also, that competitive and home advantage edge as well. But perhaps, Dean, I don't know what your thoughts are about playing games away from Kingston.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask any of the players, they love playing at St James's and the big one, and it's no coincidence. I think we won both our games, didn't we? Is that right?
Yeah.
And they certainly get up for it. But like you said, Mick, commercially it has to be right. Financially it has to stack up, and so that will be in yours and Semore's hands in terms of where we play and when we play. And I know full well that whatever you do will be for the right reasons and everything. From a pre-season point of view, we're acutely aware that our players come from not just from this immediate area, but also right across to the other side of Cumbria and all the way down into North Yorkshire and whatever. And we've toyed with the idea of playing pre-season games in other venues such as Cumbria before, and so there's no reason why we couldn't do that again going forward. We love to spread the love, and that's what it's all about. And it need to be a massive thank you to a lot of the region, the region as a whole, for supporting us in the way that they have done over the years.
Okay, thanks, chaps. Alan Loudon, you're up next. If you want to raise your hand, Alan, and we'll get you in to ask your question. But there is another way if you want to get involved in the Q&A tonight. There is a Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You are more than welcome to ask us a question at any point. We'll do our best to get through as many as we possibly can. So please do feel free. One quick question from Aidan Berry. Is Mick going to tell us where he gets his hairdo sorted?
Guess my what, sorry?
Is Mick going to tell us where he gets his hairdo sorted?
I do myself, and I'm glad I do, because my fringe was getting into my eyes and I wasn't able to see straight.
I think we've bottomed that one out. Thank you very much. Right, we'll move on. Alan is waiting patiently, should that be. Alan, over to you.
You're
Alan,
on mute.
You might have your mute on, Alan, if you can get there. You go.
Allow me to turn it off. Right. Hi guys. How do you think that professional rugby will emerge following this period of reset? What will be the principal changes, do you think, that we'll see in the game?
I suppose that comes on all three of you, really. So if we can go around one by one to answer that. Semore, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll leave the playing side to Dean when it comes to rules and speeding ball and stuff like that. As far as the commercial and the working together, I think everybody in rugby has a duty and an understanding that we all have to work together for the benefit of the game now. So with the RPA, the RFU, Premiership Rugby, the Championship, we're all dealing in moments of crisis. So we're all working together. And I think one thing that will emerge from this is a more coherent calendar and a better understanding of how we all jigsaw into each other and how we all fit. I think the finances will all be a bit more sympathetic to each other and each other's needs. I can't say the world's going to be totally rosy, but I think there's an element of collaboration between the different entities on the professional game that there's never been in the past. And personally, I don't think I've ever been on as many calls and Zooms with different authorities, and I'm no different to anyone else involved in the rugby management. It's every day, and every problem is discussed now. And I think we'll all come out of it in a stronger position to walk in each other's shoes and hopefully get the game in a direction it should have been going in prior to this.
Mick, from a commercial perspective, no one's got the rule book on how to deal with COVID, have they? So I would imagine there's probably a lot of collaboration goes on between you all at a commercial level to help each other out.
Yeah, hugely, Justin. I think, again, just what Semore says, you've seen a level of collaboration now and help off the field that I've never seen before. Just starting a really exciting project off the field amongst all 13 Premiership clubs around commercial maximisation projects and how we aggregate data and look, to make that a better customer journey for everybody. And actually, how we get, the floating rugby fan more interested in club rugby. There's 10.5 million people say they have an interest in rugby in this country. Yeah? Probably a little more than 500,000 come to Premiership games on a regular basis by the time you concepts of a season ticket holder. So I think the opportunity is huge for the sport. I think you will see closer working together with the RFU, particularly across the community game. The RFU's community development officers took a huge hit during the recent round of redundancies there. And I think that's a space via our foundation that we can help them with. So look, it's as Semore used the word reset earlier. Everybody's done that, but what it will allow us to do, I think, is provide a lot of time to pause and think and plot the way forward. And whilst we still don't know all of the answers on what does lie ahead forward, I think we've all got a good idea about what we have to do. And that big word of partnership right at the centre.
And finally, Dean, from an on-field perspective and coaching, how do you see professional rugby coming through this?
I mean, the whole thing has changed the way you coach, how you approach the game, your structure for the week. So I mean, I'll leave that to put that to one side. But the rules have changed dramatically over the last few months, and the interpretations of the contact area and the contact with the head has meant that you're seeing far cleaner games now. You'll see far more, I think, over the next few months, far more yellow cards and red cards, whether it be at international level or club level. And not all of those will be intentional. Some will be accidental, reckless or careless. But at the same time, the way it's been interpreted at the moment is that anybody who makes contact with the head and unless there's mitigation there, they'll be red carded. And I think what you'll see is a far tidier game going forward, and all for the right reasons. Concussion is a hot potato at the moment, and everybody's worried about guys who are concussed, and it's one part of that of the game which can be tidied up. So, and I think that'll tidy up the contact area as it happens. On a 3G pitch, the contact area is a really tidy area anyway. I don't know why it is, but it's using the 3G pitch. Your rucks and your balls and everything tend to be far cleaner, and it becomes far more obvious for the referees in our games than any on grass or hybrid or whatever. So that, I think that's the way that's going to go, and there'll be other changes which they'll bring in over the years, but they always change the rules every year, and you never know quite what they're going to do and when they're going to bring it in, and they just give you a week's notice and then implement it. So we just have to adapt very quickly, but that's the way it's always been. I think probably always will be.
Okay, I think we've covered that for Alan. Alan, thank you for your question. Next one for you, Mick. I think I could probably answer this for you, though, given the appetite. I think there will be when we get back to normal. Are you worried fans have got too used to watching games on TV? And how do you plan to entice them back to the stadium when we're allowed? Will they need any enticing to come back?
Look, we never rest on our laurels, and we'll always work hard, but I think there is going to be a huge pent-up demand. Notwithstanding that there are still some people worried about, what health and safety measures will be in place. And I think the onus is on us to make sure that becomes far, far less of an issue, if an issue at all. But you just look from other sports. I do a bit of work with the Rugby League World Cup, and the ticket sales for that tournament are just staggering. Those sales have all been during a lockdown or pandemic period. And it's the same with cricket, from colleagues in cricket, the test matches and 1 days, even though they don't know what they're available to sell this year, they've all sold out this summer. So we won't take it for granted, but we do know that it's strange, isn't it? when you take something away from people, perhaps you only then know how much you miss it. And I've been very, very fortunate to have a working role on home match days. Been fortunate to travel to away matches, and so I've really come to appreciate the game. I mean, it's eerie. It really is eerie watching a game with no fans, but it's been fantastic to see, particularly with how well the team have been playing as well.
Okay, quick question on Kingston Park and maybe potential developments. This one's about the roof on the north stand, along with corporate and academy facilities. Seymour, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Okay, so we've been locked down for about 12 months. To be fair to Jane, Jerry, Chantel, and Mark, they've kind of kept the place in one piece for the 12 months. But right now is where you take stock, because with the vaccines, we're starting to see a light that things are going to come back. So the last week's been interesting, because any big old building like this, and you try to fire it back up, you're going to get teething problems, and probably trying to do it when there's -6 was not the best of times. But we got it up. So I've got my list of to do to get things right, from boilers, electricians, etc. So we need to get back to where we were, but slightly modified. And then you take stock of what it is we're going to do in the future. Now, anyone looking at the planning permission we have, we still plan to do that. That is still in the works. But you have to look at it and see what's the most effective way of doing it. So we're in negotiations with the council presently to try to rejig some of it. So the roof on the north stand, which isn't just a roof, it's extra facilities, it's seating, it's changing rooms. I'd have to say that we now call that stage 5, and we've split it up into more deliverable items and items that we'll get a quicker benefit for. So definitely stage 1 would be more training facilities, both rugby and junior facilities, pitch training, etc., lighting, and changing rooms, and then followed closely by more parking facilities, and then so forth and so forth. So anyone who can remember our planning application, which is in there, we're just rejigging it all to get it up and running and deliver it as is required, not deliver it and leave it shelved for another 18 months, because then we'll have the same problems we have now and trying to fire it up, because there's no point building something that isn't going to be used for a while. But we are going to accelerate and try and build the stuff that will be used immediately, like academy training, first team training, like I said, outdoor facilities, more changing rooms, more lights, sound screens. So there is definitely, the development is still there. COVID has put a pause on it. Relegation put a pause on it as well. I did say at the last meeting, as we come out of as we come back in the Premiership, we'll start again, and we will start again, but it'll be on a different schedule. Okay, thanks, Seymour. I think one thing that the Falcons have always been famed for is their foundation and the work that you go out and you do in the community. So this question's on that. How has it affected the foundation? And when normality does eventually return, will it be able to do everything it was doing previously? Mick, is that one for you? Yeah, like every other part of the business, the pandemic has affected the foundation in quite a significant way. You know, we most of our work is about either outreach work or people coming to Kingston Park, and it's face-to-face contact, and it's using our facilities, our players, and the themes that we try and drum home by the foundation to have maximum impact, and you can't really do that. So we've done a bit of online stuff, but really, again, we're waiting for coming out of the pandemic and the vaccine kicking in. We have been able to do a tiny bit of stuff in schools when schools returned. But hopefully, as the vaccine comes in and we ease out of lockdown, we can do more and more. Because we're 16 years old now as a foundation. We've done a lot of great work with it. Even bigger plans going forward.
mentioned earlier, obviously, about the RFU having a big hit to their development area. I think we'll probably do more work with local rugby clubs because they're going to need that support as they get back on their own 2 feet. Because Semore's mentioned our buildings have been empty for 12 months and our facilities not used. They're the same, and to a degree, they like us, they rely on people going to those facilities, so they're going to need some help on the backup and running in terms of getting new participants and assistance with off-field support, and hopefully we're able to deliver that to them.
Okay, Mick, thank you. Quick one for you, Dean. What do you think will happen with the up-and-coming Lions tour?
I'd like to think it goes ahead. In what form, I don't know. There's obviously problems and would be problems going over to South Africa in terms of the risk to players going over there because of the COVID situation over there. So, but if that can be overcome, then absolutely fantastic. Then it would go ahead over there. If not, then I'd like to think that they'd look for an alternative, and how they look for that and where, it's entirely up to them. But I'd like to see it going ahead in some form or another. I don't think they can push it back at all in terms of into next year or the year after or the year after. And if they couldn't find an alternative, they'd have to can it for 4 years and then bring it back in 4 years' time. But for me, I think it's such a big brand, the Lions, that it could be done somewhere else if they couldn't do it in South Africa.
Okie dokie, thank you. Mick, earlier on you mentioned your involvement with the Rugby League, and we've got a question about the World Cup games at Kingston Park. If they do take place later this year and without fans, will the club lose money on being a host venue?
Yeah, I think, look, they'll make a decision on whether the Rugby League World Cup takes place. I think it's still all looking very positive. They'll probably not make that decision until April or May. I think it's fair to say it won't take place without fans. Economically, it doesn't work, so you would have fans in the ground, and whether that's a third, 50%, 70%, or even hopefully it could even be a full house by then. Because otherwise, it wouldn't work for the Rugby League World Cup.
All right, perfect. And one for all of you before we move on. Have any of you learned lessons or changed any practices that you're going to keep doing, even though the pandemic will be under control? Dean, do you want to start?
Other than carry on wearing my mask going to the bank, no, nothing really. Washing my hands every 20 minutes is a real chore. There's a few things which we'd look at from a work perspective. Yeah, we're far. Not really, no, to be honest with you. I'm fed up of it. I just want to get back to some semblance of normality. So,
Semore.
Well, you don't have to spend money on shavers and male grooming products. It's a lot cheaper when you let yourself go. Joking aside, yes, there's probably as much as things I won't be doing as much as things I will be doing. I think I took for granted a lot of smaller things in life. I mean, the things you really enjoy doing is going to a restaurant with some mates, going to the cinema with family, and watching rugby in a group. Because no matter what I was doing, my brain was on the next day or the next thing or the things my to-do list. I never really sat and enjoyed the moment of watching a rugby game, basically because I knew Dean would be texting me wanting something. But I never, or being at a meal and just enjoying the meal. I'm always thinking dessert and get out of there and do something else. And when we come out of this, and we will come out of this, I will be doing a lot less, but enjoying the simpler things in life. And I'm sure this is the same for a lot of people. And you have to sit and think of the tragedy that everyone's had and just appreciate being here and the smaller things. So it's a bit cheesy, but that's just genuinely how I feel.
Yeah, it's good. Mick?
I think probably just to echo what the two guys have said, it's just to appreciate what we had. Little things like just going to the pub for a pint. It's huge. I've never been one for drinking at home, and it's more a social thing for me. So things like that. Just really appreciating sort of what we've got, and I think as well, we'll be looking via the foundation about how we can help people more. I think one of the you've seen lots of great examples over the last 12 months. Some of the few positives to come out of it is how people have rallied around the colours. I think we've got to take that forward as well, and I think that can be quite central to what the foundation does. We've always helped people, but can we help even more people, perhaps?
Mick, I'll email you over a cost-saving tip for male grooming.
Go on, Seymour.
I'll email it.
Right, thank you for that. I have actually learned how to shave my own head, despite having very little hair. It still costs me £8 every other week at the barber, so I save that now because I don't spend that money.
£8?
Exactly.
£8?
The quickest £8 he ever earned me. He got the clippers out and did it like 3 times over. Went £8, please. Yeah.
Are you sure that wasn't for your nostril and your ear hair rather than?
No, that was more.
Oh,
that was more. That was more than £8 as well. That was £8 a nostril. Yeah.
Right. Let's move on to
Seymour, I'll give you £100 now to shave off your beard tomorrow.
Right, let's bring in Lewis Dinsdale, or Louis Dinsdale. Louis, if you want to raise your hand, my friend, and we'll get your question in. Quick one as well. You are allowed to ask some questions tonight. All you need to do is pop your question into the Q&A section. We'll try and get through as many as we possibly can today. But Lewis has finally managed to make his way in. Are you there, Lewis? He will get there eventually. There, is it Louis or Lewis?
It's Louis.
Louis, there you go. The floor is yours.
Half.
All right. What's your question, Louis?
I've just got a question for Dean. You've been at the club for 9 years now, which is, getting increasingly rare in the Premiership and in other sports. So firstly, that's great. Do you still see your long-term future at the Falcons?
I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest with you. Seymour and I had sort of spoken some time ago about my future, but to be honest with you, with everything going on, we just put it on hold and hadn't really visited it. So thank you for reminding me.
sorry to put you in a difficult position.
It's probably a conversation that Seymour and I need to have. So yeah, thank you. Justin,
you're on mute, Justin.
Well, I didn't want to ruin it for everybody. Do we bring Seymour in at this point, or shall we move on?
Well, I'm scared of Dean, so you can just do what he wants.
Louis, thanks a lot for your question. That's put the cat amongst the pigeons. Another one here is from, there's no name on this, but it's for Dean. Do you feel like the lack of crowd has benefited some teams and helped players play their game with less pressure, maybe causing a few surprises?
I can only speak for personal experience, and as you walk onto the pitch, you just play to whatever's happening in that sort of rectangular sort of piece of turf or Astro or 3G or whatever it is, and you tend to block what's going on in the stand out. The only times that you really notice it, and up at KP, it's absolutely fantastic when you run out on a Friday night and you hear the roar from the crowd. That's the point whereby you get that buzz. But then as soon as that whistle goes, it has absolutely no bearing, or it didn't do to me. But some people may need it. I mean, if you're a wing who's stood out there and he's got nothing to do, you could probably be having a chat with somebody in the crowd. I know for half the night, I don't know, but certainly for me, it didn't make any difference at all. But I'm pretty sure that some people will get something from it, and I don't think it makes a shred of difference, really.
Mick, I think we've chatted before. One of the things you do appreciate is the hits that the players make and the tackles that go in and the noise that you don't hear on an ordinary match day when you've got crowds in.
Well, like we discussed this with Dean, and Dean says obviously him and the coaches see it every day, so perhaps they don't notice as much. But the hits are frightening. I think absolutely frightening. It's brutal. It really is. You can see probably why the players can hardly walk sort of the day or two after the game. What's been amazing as well is the amount of talking you hear on the pitch as well. I mean, you always know that there's going to be that, but pretty much it's just constant noise from the team. And then usually actually the team that's on top is potentially doing the most talking. I just find it absolutely fascinating. We won't hear that, hopefully, as the crowds come back. So it has been really interesting to see it for the last few months.
Okay.
Justin, can I just have a comment on that,
of course,
please? As far as ownership of a club in the business side, there's financially, there's very little difference between playing to no crowd and not playing at all. Money-wise, you kind of need the crowds. I know there's TV, but the cost of putting a game on are quite substantial, especially with the COVID testing. But I think everybody involved in the sport knows the importance of having games on TV on a weekend. And for me particularly, it gives me something to look forward to, something that breaks up the monotony on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, week in, week out. Crowds is always nice to have, but I think a second best is having the availability to watch live games on TV. And I'm not here trying to promote TV. I'm just here trying to say the decision was made just to make sure that it's available for people to watch at the weekends.
Okay. I think we may be about to have our most intelligent and perhaps entertaining contribution of the evening so far. James Cook. James, if you want to pop your hand up and we'll bring you into the session. The reason I say probably the most entertaining and intelligent is because James Cook is 9 years of age and he's about to ask his question. Here he is. A warm welcome, James. We can see you're in. We just can't. There you go. James Cook, age 9. The floor is yours.
At what age can you join the Falcons as a player?
Oh, dear me. What you have to do is to play at either your school, James, or at your local rugby club. Play regularly and play as well as you possibly can.
I played at Gateshead.
You play Gateshead. Well, you'll be well noticed at Gateshead, playing at Gateshead, I can assure you. And what position do you play?
I want to be a 9.
You want to be a 9? Wow. So I think 9 is one of the best positions on the pitch. So you're playing in the right position. You have that interaction with the forwards, and you also you have that connection with the backs as well. So I think you're in one of the best positions, and you're obviously at a club whereby you'll be noticed because we have good connections down there as well. So the thing to do is to carry on playing and playing to the best of your ability, but most of all to enjoy it. And then what happens is you'll be talent spotted, and if you get talent spotted, you'll be invited to come to the academy at the club. And it's normally around about 14 or 15, depending on when your birthday is. And that's when we start inviting kids in. We try to leave them to play at their clubs for as long as possible, because obviously we want you to play with your friends, to enjoy it, playing alongside your friends, and to go as long as you can playing together and entering various competitions, perhaps even going on tours with your parents and other parents and kids as well. So a large part of it is the enjoyment factor, but continuing to strive to be as good as you can, but at the same time understanding that potentially at the age of 14 or 15, if you're playing well enough, then you'll get picked up by the scouts.
So James, you've impressed Dean, and that's from a playing perspective. Now it's all about convincing Semore. How much would you want per week to play?
How much do you want?
Maybe at least twice, maybe 3 times a week.
No.
You want paying 3 times a week? I think they'll pay you once a month, probably. How much would you want?
At least 5 million or something.
I don't think we'll have the salary caps to worry about then, to be honest, James, but I've got a feeling there's a deal to be done. Thanks for your question.
I think you'll be going a long way, James.
And good luck with Gateshead. Thanks for coming on, James.
James, come and say hello to us. And next time we have crowds in the ground, come and say hi to me and Dean, okay?
Okay.
James, when we're back to some semblance of normality, if you want to come and watch training, all right, get in touch with us and then come along with your parents and then come and watch training one day and meet the players. All right?
How about that?
Thank you.
Good.
You're welcome. Thanks very much, James. Take care, buddy. Right, we have got some rumour questions now, probably one for Dean. Rumours concerning Danny Cipriani and Mike Brown. Anything to report?
Well, I never comment on rumours, but I do love a rumour. But as I say, I never comment on rumours. And, if either or both or neither are signed, then it'll come out in the wash.
Okay. Right, Edward.
That was as clear as mud.
Exactly.
Edward Potter, if you want to raise your hand, please, we'll get you on to ask your question, although James Cook has just come and set the bar particularly high. So we're expecting big things from you, Edward. We will try to get through as many questions as we possibly can. If you've put one in the Q&A section, please leave it there. We will try and get to you at some point, but we're at pains to get through all the questions we've already got, but we will try. Edward Potter, I don't think he's going to get there. But his question was about the Premiership Rugby Cup due to be played this season. Do you see it as a development pathway first and foremost, Dean?
I certainly do, yeah. I think we've got so many exciting young players, and a lot of those players haven't had any rugby this year at all. So certainly this year I'll be using it as a pathway for them to get some rugby and to show their wares to us. Yeah, I mean, it certainly will be this year.
Perfect. And while we're talking about recruitment a little bit earlier on with those two names that we put your way, what is the club's long-term strategy when it comes to recruitment?
Yeah, again, it's one of these things. You're always looking 2 years ahead, and that changes every year as well, because it's not just about what happens 2 years ahead. You're also reacting to injuries, career-ending injuries, retirements, people who want to move on. So yeah, you're preempting what the salary cap is going to be, what expenditure is going to be, what players' wages are going to be, and that's based upon how you want to play the game and recruiting accordingly.
Okie dokie. Magnus Leask. Magnus, if you want to stick your hand up, we'll bring you into the session. You can ask your question live. It's quite a long one, but fingers crossed you are there. Here he comes. And I think this is going to be a question for you, Dean, once we finally get Magnus in. By the wonders of modern technology. There you are. Are you DJing on the side there, Magnus?
Yeah, g'day boys. Hope you're all well. My question is great to see loads of local lads playing for the Falcons. However, grassroots rugby's been hit pretty hard by COVID. The local £120 prop probably isn't feeling very valued with all the touch rugby games that are going on. And I was just wondering if you have any advice for people who run local clubs about how to retain adult players in the amateur game, especially big front rowers that don't want to run around and play touch.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's a good question, actually, because I think that if you were to look at small-sided games rather than probably people are playing sort of tennis-side and full width and everything else like that, small-sided games, and you can do it weight-related as well or position-related, it makes life a lot easier, and you have a little bit more fun when you're playing alongside guys who are probably as quick as you or as slow as you or as heavy as you or as light as you. I hated playing touch, and that's because I was like you, 128 kgs or whatever it was, 120 kgs, and I wasn't very quick. And the boys had run around me all day long. So small-sided games I loved all day long, and it develops your skill. It gets you involved a little bit more, but obviously you've got to still follow all the protocols as well. And then probably 10 minutes at the end, just go into the full-size pitch. But as I say, small-sided games is probably the way to go.
Magnus, great question. Thank you. We've got a question probably for you again, Dean. This one says, we've got some fab talented players that have left the club in the last 12 months. Sinotti, Tane Takalua, two of them. It was said that Tane left for a great opportunity that would see him and his family right. It's since come out that he wasn't particularly happy at the club. What are we doing to look after our players, especially those from overseas, so their experience at the club is a positive one?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, that, because we work really hard for the players and to keep them happy. But quite often players will leave for various reasons. In Tane's case, he did get a fantastic offer from Toulon. His head got turned by them financially. And couple that with the fact that Nelly Latu left the year before, he was his big friend and his wife's big friend, he found it very difficult. And we felt it was the right time for him to go, and he wanted to go. So, but on the whole, we work very hard. We have every Tuesday, Ros will put on a crash for all the girls and mums and toddlers, come in and have drinks and everything, so they all get to know each other there. We put on barbecues. We have cultural days whereby the players will cook their cultural dishes. So we have barbecues, humus. The Argentinian boys have done racks and of meat, all these sort of things. And so I totally understand that some people perhaps may not like it, but that's life, and you'll always get one or two of those. But on the whole, we work very hard at integrating people into the community. The difficulty we have at the moment is that nobody's seeing anybody, and it is hard at the moment for the players and the wives. But that's not just the foreigners; it's the locals as well. But yeah, at the moment it is what it is. But on the whole, we work pretty hard at getting people into the community.
Very honest of you. Thanks, Dean. I think if you're watching, wherever you are watching, by the way, I think this proves we don't vet your questions. We don't not ask the particularly difficult ones. And as you can probably see from the ones that we've asked so far, we've put our three guests on the spot quite a bit today. And I think to answer that one as truthfully and as honestly as Dean did, I think it's testament to what we're trying to achieve with these fans forums. We try and bring you as close as we possibly can. We're going to move on. We've got
Dean, can I just come in on that? And I think, just to give Dean his credit, because he'll never sing his own praise, but not just Dean, John Stolko and the rest of the backroom staff. Now, I've worked across a few clubs in my time in sports, professional rugby clubs, with some really good people. And I'll say this now, the culture and the welcome that Dean gives, particularly players from overseas, and how he integrates them, I think is absolutely second to none. Absolutely. And I think it's worthwhile saying as well, guys like, Tani was fantastic for the club, so was Sonotti. They were well liked when they were here. But it was that man there on your screen that gave them the chance. They were picked up really from competitions that perhaps weren't as mainstream as their talents, later showed that they could play at. So he's given them a chance. He welcomed them in. And I think for a small club, I think we do it really well, and it's all down to that guy.
Okay.
I'll buy a pint later, Mick. We're down the red line.
I will not forget that either as well, Dean.
He only drinks halves. Right, injury list. A few names in the frame: Santiago, Will Welsh, Callum Chick, Mickey Young, Luther Burrell. Any updates on them that you can share with us?
Yeah, they're all pretty close to playing. The only one that isn't is Santiago Grondona. I mean, poor lad. I mean, he's the up-and-coming star of the Argentinian side, and then he ruptured his ACL and has had to have that. He's out for the rest of the season, unfortunately. But the other boys are pretty close to being back. Mickey's within days. Chick is within days. Welshie probably a little bit longer. He mentioned Luther's been training the last couple of weeks. Had we played, then he most probably would have featured. So yeah, we do have injuries, and sometimes they go on for months. But at the moment, I think Santiago is probably the only one which is longer than 1 month or 6 weeks.
Okay, perfect. Peter Studd. Peter, if you want to put your hand up in the question board, we'll bring you in. While we're doing that, we've got a question from Ashley Chisholm, who's on the question answer session board. If you want to get on that, you're more than welcome. Given there's no relegation happening this season, how do you feel about this, and how will this impact preparation for the rest of the season? Who wants to take that?
Well, I think I may as well, mightn't I? We sort of discussed it before and had numerous discussions about it before, and we felt that it doesn't lessen the desire to win a game at all. What it probably does do is lessen the incentive to take a risk on a player who may be coming back from injury or carrying a slight knock, and you just say, right, let's just play the safety card here and make sure that we look after him more, because every coach will take that risk on bringing somebody back 3 days, 4 days too early, in the hope that it doesn't backfire. And it very rarely backfires, but you know, I think in every coach's career, it will have happened a couple of times. So it'll take out that risk element to it, but it won't dampen the desire to win and the way you approach the game at all. And you know, you're either risk adverse in the way that you approach the game, and some people are slightly different. You know, if you Saracens, for instance, as they were sort of 2 years ago, you know, you're kicking everything from their own 22. I don't think that will change how they approach the game at all. They think that's their way of winning the game, and that's the way they'll carry on playing, I think. Okay,
Peter, sorry to keep you hanging on. Fire away, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Enjoying the forum so far, so thanks everybody. It's a question for Dino, really. You chop and change who plays fly half quite a lot, and obviously the mix with the scrum half as well. So I just wondered, is that just squad rotation, or are you still experimenting with what your best mix is?
It's a bit of everything, Peter, to be honest with you. Sometimes it's injuries. You know, sometimes personal situations has dictated people were given a rest, and we're still finding that what ultimately is our best combinations, with new centres having come in, like Luther and obviously Mateus as well, linking with those, and with the scrum half as well coming in as well. We're still trying to find a little bit as to what is our best pairing or backline. But I mean, that's only come about, and the only reason that we're having these problems is because we play 3 games, and we have a week's rest, and we play another 3 games and have 2 weeks rest, and it's been so fragmented. We've not had this run of 8 or 10 games, which we really want, whereby you can actually plan it out. And every time you do plan something like that, we've been hit by COVID restrictions, or games being called off, or whatever, or injuries. But there's no real reason why we've played it the way that we have, other than probably at this moment in time, injuries or unavailability.
Okie dokie. Thanks, Dean. And thank you very much for your question, Peter. Thank you for coming on. Don't forget, if you do want to ask a question, get yourself into the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Stick one in there. We'll try and get around as many as we possibly can between now and close of play. We've probably got about another half an hour, I think, before we need to let these guys go. Quick question on European Challenge Cup, probably one for Seymour. Do we know what's happening with it at the minute?
Yeah, it's not finalised, but what I've heard is going to happen is the top 8 will meet 8 from the Champions Cup and go into the last 16 in a knockout competition. So we'll just jump towards the end of the competition, skip the next 2 rounds. They won't be replayed, and go into the last 16, play, what is that, coaches semis final.
And any time scale on when we kind of expect that to be official?
No, there's still discussions in regards to who has home fixtures and who's being COVID hit, etc. But I think we've got a bit of time, because we're sticking with the original calendar dates of when the games are going to be. So it's still another 6 weeks, I think.
Okay. Next, we'll bring in Michael Eason, who's got a question about a new arrival at Kingston Park. Michael, if you want to put your hand in the air on the Zoom channel, and we should be able to bring you in if you are there. Put shivers down some people's spines, that face. Michael, can you hear us?
He's clearly got a good shaving device.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, the lockdowns aged me a bit. So, yeah, great. Thanks for the forum. It's great, Ben. It's great, this, so really appreciate it. So it's great having Nick Easter on board. So how did that come about? Because I've heard Nick on a couple of rugby pods, but he's not really said how it's happened.
I needed a drinking partner. Well, actually, it's partly true. I do need a drinking partner. But, Wellesley and Wellesley was doing the defence before, and Wellesley and I had agreed that last year was going to be his final year. And we were grooming Don Waldock to take over from Wellesley. but Dom was drawn to Gloucester. The thought of obviously greater crowds and an unbelievable squad to work with, and so we sat there scratching our heads, and I've been speaking to Nick for some time over the last 18 months when he was in South Africa at the Sharks, and obviously I'd known Nick for quite some time over down at Quins, and we had always kept in touch, and I was pretty impressed with what he'd done over at the Sharks. Understood keeping my ear to the ground, what work he'd done down at Quins, and I felt that he was the right man for the job. And when I wrote a subject with Semore, and we discussed it, and as a consequence, I made him an offer, and he came up. So yeah.
I'd just like to add to that. Dean makes my job really easy because Nick is a very, very high caliber individual, and to be able to attract that kind of caliber to the club really depends a lot on the gravitas of someone like Dean and the pull he has, knowing that he's a good mentor for anyone like Nick who's working his way up through the coaching career pathway. So that makes it really easy.
Right, we'll move on. We've had a couple of questions on refereeing, and I don't know if any of you caught up with something that happened in football yesterday with a referee squaring up to a player on the pitch. I think it happened in the Ipswich game. Andrea's questions vanished, unfortunately, but she was more concerned about do rugby players need to set the example to the rest of sports, whether their approach to the referee, and are we managing to maintain those kind of standards even today?
Yeah, I think we are. I was amazed to see it yesterday, and I saw that the referee had apologised today, hadn't he? But I didn't see an apology from the player at all for his approach in the way that he approached, stormed up to the referee. So I think it's a bit odd, that is, and I felt sorry for the referee, because ultimately he obviously felt threatened enough to actually front up and square up in the way that he did. But anyway, that's by the by. We don't have those problems in rugby, and I don't think we ever will do, because I think the sanctions are strong enough should anybody do that. And there's always a deterrent there, but also we don't do it because it is that game for thugs played by gentlemen, isn't it? And a lot of our boys are those gentle giants, and although they are competitive, and occasionally they do say the wrong things, a la Kyle Sinclair not so long ago, and have you heard Owen Farrell at the weekend when there was a bit of jostling going on? They're never derogatory about the referee normally, and if they are, then it's not just a slap on the wrist; it's a good slapping that they get.
Okay, similar kind of question. Exeter, this question states, should have had 2 yellow cards last weekend for off-the-ball incidents. London Irish should have had one the week before for a late hit. No cards, as usual, were given. Newcastle Falcons have been on the wrong end of some dreadful refereeing for a long, long time. Do Newcastle Falcons suffer with referees as a result of the elephant in the room that the RFU don't want a club from the frozen north in the Premiership? There's a lot of history with this question by the looks of it. So, Dean, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, I can do. I mean, I can only speak from a statistics point of view. We employ somebody called Geraint Ashton-Jones, who analyses every game from a referee's perspective, and he will give his opinion based upon purely the rules and people adhering to the rules and errors that referees make, omissions that they make, and ultimately he'll create a report which will indicate whether you've got the rub of the green or not. And over the seasons that we've been using Geraint, I would say we would be middle of the road almost every season, and not had too much of the rub of the green and not been too heavily penalised. And I totally agree. There are occasions whereby you look at incidents and you say, well, the referees missed that. But we sometimes look with sort of very blinkered sort of viewpoints, and we don't look at what the other things that the referees miss, which probably would have affected us in other ways. So, yeah, there's sometimes you get uptight, or I get uptight about it, but on the whole, I think our referees do a really good job. And although we sometimes moan, I just let them get on with it, and we find it better to work with them than against them, and yeah, I'll agree. We do get treated harshly sometimes, but on other occasions we get the rub of the green. So it works both ways. That's from an on-field perspective, and I think Semore, you probably want to come in at this point because you come at it from an entirely different angle, from an off-the-field perspective.
Yeah. Well, just on the field first, on the refereeing. As much as we have had a small period of time where we felt everything went against us, generally the refereeing in the Premiership compared to other competitions around the world is a very, very high standard. And sometimes, until you haven't got it anymore, you don't appreciate what you've got. But jumping aside to the RFU and the team in the North, I've been working a lot with the RFU lately, and regional representation is very important to them. And having a team in the Northeast in the Premiership, they see is very important. There's a limit to what they can do to help, because clearly it's us in our own meritocracy that's got to keep us there. But I definitely do not feel in any way they don't want us here. And if anything, I thought their RFU were very good and very quick. When COVID happened last year, I think it was straight after the Bedford game, the season wasn't finished. And they took the stance, and which was the correct stance and the common sense stance, to promote us very quickly, so we know what we're doing and where we're going. A friend of mine owns a football club, and he was in a similar position, and his club didn't get promoted, and his season got totally cancelled, and he's back in the same division. So did they have to do it? Maybe, maybe not. But the speed at which they did it and the transparency and the reasoning, I think it was very, very positive. And it just showed that they actually weren't against us, and they wanted us. And very quickly, they wanted us in the Premiership.
Mick, you're nodding away quite ferociously there. And you've been at the club a lot of years. Obviously something that's ringing true with you as well.
Yeah, very much so. I think Semore said it on the head is ultimately it's down to us. We've got to ensure that we're good enough to remain in that top flight. But I think the RFU are supporting. They brought Rugby World Cup games up in 2015. They backed our bid for the European finals, and they brought the England-Italy games. So they're going above and beyond in terms of what they can do to really promote rugby in the region. Up until COVID hit, you can just see with the with the crowds we were getting, it was working. So I think, they don't get, it's very easy to bash a governing body. It's the easiest thing in the world. You see it from all sports, but actually they do get a lot right.
Okay, interesting one here. This is for Dean. Dean, who's the one player from your career at Kingston Park so far that's made you laugh every day?
I love characters. I really do. From a coaching perspective, Scotty McLeod coming into the office every morning will always bring a smile to my face. But, some of the boys over the years, Mark Tampin, I think, is one of those characters who we've got at the club at the moment, along with Charlie Madison. I mean, those two getting together, they're good fun, along with Gary Graham as well. But if you look back a little bit further, there's the Hawk. For those who remember the Hawk, who always brought a smile to my face. And for those who can remember his short time here, Frank the Tank Montanella, what a character he was. I was signing him. I met him at a cafe just outside Montpellier, and I walked in. I'd done my research on him, spoken to a few people, and they said he drinks, he smokes, and he bets. And I walked in there and I sat down with him, and I said, look, just to be perfectly blunt with you, I've heard that you smoke, you drink wine to excess, and I said that you bet heavily. And you have an addiction to betting. He said, no. He says, all of those are behind me. They're totally behind me. Don't worry. I said, fine, absolutely fine. So we sat down, talked about things for about an hour, and I offered him a glass of wine. He refused, and I thought, absolutely brilliant. And I got up to walk away, so I had to catch a flight in about an hour later. I got to walk away. And I just thought, as I left the building, I just got one last question. I walked back, and as I walked back, he was still sat at his desk. He got a cigarette on, a glass of wine in front of him, and he was on Bet 365 on it.
Brilliant.
But I still signed him.
Yeah.
and he won us the game down at Sale with his scrimmaging. So.
Right. Before we move on to, because we've got some questions on ring fencing, but we've got a couple that have come up on the question and answer session. A quick one from Thomas J. Question for Dean: can England keep 15 men on the pitch and beat Wales?
I think we'd give it a good go, but I think they've got too much class at the moment. Having said that, our boys are pretty good. I think when we can get our strongest side out, and we've got that strength and depth on the bench as well, you know, we're a good match for most teams. Who's going to win the Six Nations? This is for all three of you. It'll come down to Le Crunch, I reckon, and it depends on which team Eddie picks. And so I think the French, when they turn it on, they're on fire, but they don't like playing at Twickenham. But they've got so much quality in their side. You look at their back line that they can pick, and some of the boys that aren't fit as well, they could come into it. And then some of the pack as well. There's so many other boys who just aren't playing, certainly on the back row and then in the front row as well. You know, Camille Chat, who hasn't started this year, who's this unbelievable hooker. It'll be interesting. If they can put their full team out, then I think the French will win. Okay. But I don't think they've got the full team out, so I'll probably go with England. Okay, England for Dean. Seymour?
It has to be the Mark Wilson or Gary Gray. Since Dean's gone for England, I'll just go for Scotland. Okay, and finally, Mick?
France. Just to be different. And they have shown a bit over the first couple of games.
Question from Steve Lord. If we hopefully continue our good early season form and end up qualifying for the Champions Cup next season, how would we deal with that?
Yeah, very, very different to what we've done over the years. And I think it depends upon the structure of the season as well, and, you know, what competitions we'll be in and everything else like that. But you know, such as the strength and depth that we're getting through now and getting into the side, I think we'll be able to compete a lot more than we did do. Having said that, you look at how we beat Toulon away, which wasn't a bad result. I think we beat them at home. I can't remember whether we beat them.
Montpellier at home we beat.
Montpellier at home, wasn't it? We lost to Toulon at home. So I think we acquitted ourselves reasonably well. I think when we went to Montpellier away, we got thumped, but you know, that was always going to be a difficult game.
Shirley Pollard has sent us a question. You sometimes make signing announcements on the fans forum. Anything to report?
Yeah, I was asked by Seymour this, and I said I haven't got anything ready to announce just at this moment in time, but there are signings that will be announced over the next month or so, and so just keep your ears to the ground, and they'll be announced.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Dean. Right, ring fencing. We've just seen this kind of come to the fore. It's been mooted for so long in rugby. COVID's almost enforced it this year, but it's certainly put it back on the table. We'll go around the board. Mick, we've not heard from you for a while. Your views on ring fencing?
It's the same as I've said for the last sort of 10 years or 15 years, 20 years on and off. I'm firmly in favour of it. Look at the best leagues in the world. You know, the NRL in Australian rugby, the NFL, all the rest of them. They're not built on relegation. They have teams that finish last 1 year and inside 2 years finish at the top of the line. Because they have, you know, systems in place to support clubs that just have a one-off bad year rather than kicking them out the top. If we had 5 or 6 teams below that were chomping at the bit, like football, it works in football because most of the championship have got the stadium, the support base, the commercial program to step up, and then they just get the TV. We don't have that. I'd love it to be the case, but the simple fact of the matter is, we don't have full ring fencing because we're still saying that I would still have teams could come up over a period of time. But don't just be booting out established clubs just because they have a one-off. Not changed my tune. Last 2 decades on that.
Seymour, any different from you?
Yeah, same as Mick. I'm not for ring fencing. I'm for expansionism. I think if a team should be in the Premiership, then it should be in the Premiership. I don't think a team in the Premiership that is clearly Premiership quality should be made to sit in the Championship because they had a run of bad injuries. If it's a Championship standard team, then that's something else. But at the same time, you can't curtail anyone's ambition. If the team's doing the right things and is set up to come and play in the Premiership, then great. I'm all for expansionism, but there is a size to the professional game in England, and you need to find the right balance, and there is a right criteria to hit. So, same as Mick, I haven't changed my story. I'm always supportive of it, but it's got to be the right team playing in the right level and with open arms to anybody who are ambitious enough to come up.
Dean, there'll naturally be a question about how hard and how passionate players would play if there's no threat of relegation towards the end of the season. But I would imagine all you would need is to come and see players in training just to see how seriously they take this game. I don't think I've ever come across one player who wouldn't move heaven and earth to win a game regardless of what was on it.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the culture within the club, which is said at the top, isn't it? And if your DOR is blasé about things, then the team will play in a very blasé way. And there's no way that I would do anything like that. And I would expect my players, should we be in that position where there's nothing riding on it, to still go out and win. It also depends on how the structures are, who's fighting for a contract, what's going on as well. But the big thing is the culture within the club, and the boys train every week to win games, and they get their enjoyment out of winning games, and that's what they'll try and do.
That's for this season. If we go beyond this season, will we see reduced playing budgets, diluted team selections with that threat of relegation removed? Mick's already shaking his head. You're a definite no.
You've just got to see what happens in other sports. You've got to be careful of is that anecdotal evidence and one-liners that are just bandied around by either the people, quite influential journalists in the media or fans are taken as fact. Challenge these one-liners, because they are just that. They're lazy anecdotal evidence. The best one of the lot is if you take away relegation, there's no interest in the games. Well, I'll tell you now, when we've been involved in relegation games, look back to the games we played against Worcester and London Irish that were relegation games. Right? There were some of our lowest crowds of the season. One of those two games, I forget which one it was, it's either the Worcester or London Irish game, scored the lowest TV rating of any game live that year. So if there's all this interest in relegation, where is it? Because they're not buying tickets and they're not watching on TV. So, that's an actual statistical fact that I will use to challenge the, opinion. And it is lazy anecdotal.
Okay. Semore, Dean, do you want to come in on the back of that, or have we said all there is to say?
As far as budgets go, there was a salary cap set for the next 3 years last year, and that is irrelevant of whether we have promotion, relegation or not. So that was just set because of the economic circumstances that the world's changing into. As far as the competition side per game, nobody could ever accuse the Six Nations of not trying their best because there's no relegation out of the Six Nations or any of the other major tournaments. So no, I think it's definitely not true, and I think it's just an opportunity to get more consistency and not have to chop and change a team if you do.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm happy with what the boys have said.
Okay. We're going to bring in Philip Ronald and Barbara Ronald, who've been waiting patiently. I don't know if they were going to kind of ask their question together, but they are together by the looks of it. So, guys, if you want to put your hand up, you'll need to do that on the Zoom platform. Raise your hand, you'll see the little icon. Oh, we've got Barbara who's already in. Barbara, you've got your mic on mute at the minute, so if you can unmute yourself and ask the question, we're ready to go.
Yeah, it's great form again, as usual. Dead simple, straightforward one, probably for Semore. Would the simplest option for the club to be to transfer the 2021 season tickets to next year? And if the grounds do open before the end of this season, just to pay as you go?
Probably, I think it would straddle Semore and Mick.
Yeah.
Who wants to take it first?
I'll pick up on that. Yeah, look, it's I think it's a great point. I think at the moment, we don't know when we're going to reopen. So we are hedging our bets a bit on this. I mean, what we have done is for people that had season tickets for this year that have paid money, you've had options to either get a cash refund, get a credit with an additional 10%, or we thank everybody that's responded, in particular the ones that have donated to the Community Foundation and to the player sponsorship. But ultimately, you know, every fan has got their own particular circumstances, and we do respect that. You know, fans can use the credit as and when we get back with season tickets. We don't know when that's going to be, because the biggest unknown is we don't know, first of all, when fans will be allowed back, and secondly, how many will be allowed back. And as soon as we know that, we can start to make some decisions, and we will share them.
I think it's interesting you mentioned that, Mick, because I think a lot of people perhaps think that sporting clubs and people are in the know about potentially when things could kind of get back to normal, but we're in the dark as everybody else is. It's simply, we have no idea.
It's interesting. I was on a call with DCMS, or the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. That effectively, it's the government. They will find out on Monday when we find out, listening to Boris Johnson. You know, they don't even share this information within the government because there are that many leaks going on out there. So it's, you know, you've got to understand their position. As is ours, we hear it when everybody else does. We don't get any prior notice on these things, and then we have to take a small amount of time to take stock of that, and then we can.
Okay. Sorry, Semore.
Yeah, just there's the season ticket holders, there's corporate, there's sponsors, there's partners, and there's a lot of people who we sold product to and are very important to us, and we haven't been able to deliver because the ground's been shut down. Now, many people who are able to have kindly, like Mick said, taken a rain check, taken a credit that they can use going forward once we do open up. And people whose circumstances are different and need the money back, that's fully understandable. And everybody's circumstances are different, and these are difficult times for everybody in one way or another. Once we do open up, anybody who has a season ticket will have priority to get that season ticket, no matter what's happened. And it would just be a bit unfair just to say, well, we're going to transfer the ticket and then have to do the same next year if we're still under these circumstances. So that is why we've given everybody the option rather than just transfer it lock, stock and barrel, because everybody is different. And, most loyal customers have sometimes needed the money back, and that's understandable. But when things open, they'll get their work back, and we'll be able to supply them with hopefully the weekend's entertainment and the passion that we have. And other people are in a more comfortable position and are happy just to wait, and I'm very grateful for that. So we're trying to cater it for everybody, not just a lock, stock and barrel we're moving here.
Okay, thanks, Semore. Another question that's just dropped from David Hines. Should Italy be dropped from the Six Nations? For example, Georgia brought in to make it 7 nations.
Expansionism, not relegation, right?
I thought Semore might say that.
Leave it as it is, mate, and leave it as it is at the moment.
Right. Next question. After the success of the BT coverage of every game during lockdown, are there plans to sell virtual season tickets that will give supporters online access to games, home and away? That would be great for supporters who live away from the area, I suppose, almost like the iFollow model that football has. Who is that for, Mick?
Yeah, look, I think it's an interesting one. It'd be good to see how this sort of develops over the next few years. But I think what people have got to understand is that BT buy the rights to games. Now, perhaps Simon might be able to give a bit more detail on the new deal that they've sort of just agreed to. But I do very much see sport in this country moving more towards an OTT platform, which is sort of direct to consumers. So some of the content going direct to supporters, perhaps not via a BT Sport or a Sky Sports. So, take myself, I'm a huge NFL fan. What I buy is, I don't have Sky Sports. I buy an NFL Game Pass, so I'm able to access the games direct. So NFL sell me that direct to me. It means I don't have to buy a lot of sports I'm not interested in, and I can watch as many or as few games as I want. And I do think that ultimately most sports will start to move towards that model. We're not there yet. I think we've just got to be cognizant of the fact that BT bought those rights and try and package them up to drive subscription, because that's what enables them to support the Premiership in the way they do.
Semore, do you want to come in on the BT deal and how that's structured, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, this season, what happened with BT is they got the rights and they're kindly showing every game. So it allows them to have the ability to sell home games to clubs for the pass to give to season ticket holders. But it's the first time, to my knowledge, that they've been able to almost chop and dice games. So it might be a model they'll go forward to. Now, they don't have the rights to every game next season, but they are the main partner. So I think with the success of people watching individual games and not taking an overall package, it's got to be something they'll need to wake up to. So I won't be surprised if there is some kind of package, a follow me type package. But right now, next year is just the usual BT subscription, which will show a majority of the games. There isn't a match by match basis, but I do think that might change.
I was reading, interestingly enough, to throw in at this point, there is a test going on at the minute with several sports where you can buy a virtual season ticket and wear the goggles and pick your seat within the whatever you decide to go and watch at particular points around the stadium, be it tennis, be it snooker, be it rugby, and you can almost watch the game as if you sat in the stadium at this particular point. Apparently it's 2 or 3 years away, but the tests are going on right now to work out whether or not that's possible.
Witchcraft, Justin, it's witchcraft.
Right.
That wouldn't work. That wouldn't work for me because, like I said before, I really miss the pleasure of just being at a game. And I don't think going forward I will ever be upset about losing a game. Well, I hope I'm not upset about losing the game. And I'm just filled with joy at the fact that I'm actually able to enjoy it with my friends.
I think most of us, all of us, are in exactly the same boat in terms of things can't get back to normal quick enough. We've all been on Zoom, we've all been on Teams, we've all been doing video calling. Any funny or embarrassing faux pas during these endless video meetings? Who wants to go first?
I think it's just the usual, isn't it? It's the, how many times have you heard it, you're on mute? Yeah. There's almost like Zoom bingo. I mean, tonight as well, Justin, I thought I'll set up a new fancy backdrop, and I turned up and you three have got one as well. It's like turning up to a party in the same shirt, isn't it? And look, just an aside on that, I mean, look, you can see all our fantastic sponsors in the background there. And again, it's not just season ticket holders and corporate guests and all the staff and players at the club that really supported us through these last 12 months. These guys have been absolutely fantastic. They've all re-signed. They've all supported us through some pretty tough times. So we've got to say thanks to them as well. No, just long answer, just the odd, you're on mute.
Semore?
Well, I think my biggest embarrassment is I'm a technophobe. Everything I do goes wrong. Virtually every big meeting I've been at that involves major decisions and I have a vote, the batteries ran out and I haven't been able to get back in. So I've had to just call them, but I can't. People are too polite to actually phone up and say, you look like an idiot, so-and-so walked naked behind you, anything like that. I think the majority of my issues have been just I've left the meeting early because the batteries ran out and I haven't figured out how to do anything about it.
See, there, Dean, could be a lesson. Just sign that marquee player that you want to sign and blame Seymour's batteries for running out. Surely that's
I remember I told you about that.
What do you mean? It's already happened.
On a one final note before we all go, because I think we all probably feel the same. How much are you looking forward to, in inverted commas, normality returning in whatever guise that happens to be? But just hearing the crowd again and hearing a buzz again at Kingston Park is something I think we're all looking forward to. What are you looking forward to the most when we finally get back to normal? Mick.
For me, it's just walking around the ground during the game. I do it quite often. I'm terrible at watching the game. I get too nervous, so I go on a walk, and it's amazing how many faces you see over that you recognise. It's in the hundreds. It's just familiar faces in the south stand, the north stand, sat in obviously the same seats in the west stand. So for me, it's going to be bumping into some supporters who've been with the club a lot longer than I have, and I've been around 20 years. So just catching up with them again, perhaps having a beer with them after the game. And again, I'll say it again, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. I've really, really missed that buzz on match.
Dean?
Listen, I miss the smell of match day, of whether it be the burger vans or the fish and chip or the little angel fish or whatever. You go, Semore, right?
Product placement.
It just the build up to a game with all the smell and the atmosphere and everything else like that. You miss that, and I don't know. I said earlier on that when a player gets onto the pitch, it should be just about what happens on that sort of green bit of turf. But the build up to it is everything, and then all of a sudden you just focus on one thing, and it's that smell, whether it be the changing rooms going onto the pitch, what's happening around, and the buzz that you get. And Kingston Park on a Friday night is something special, and I really miss that. So it'd be really good to get back to that. And
some closing words from yourself, Semore?
Not closing words, but what I really looking forward to is one of the best experiences you get is when you're in an away game, and I sit in the Lions' Den with the away management, and when you walk out of the ground, you see an army of Falcons supporters, and it just puts a smile on your face, and you feel home away from home, and you realize the importance to everyone. And I miss that feeling, especially if you're winning. But even if you're not, you just walk out there and you feel, oh my God, this is amazing. And it's that's just the camaraderie, and you feel it a bit more at the away games for some reason. I think it's because we're kind of in the Lions' Den, but it feels really, I really miss that feeling.
Those days will return. And for everybody watching, wherever you are right now, thank you so much for tuning in and finding out a little bit more about the Newcastle Falcons. Thank you for your questions, especially if you've come on live, because I know that's pretty daunting as well. But I'm sure I speak on everybody's behalf. We can't wait to see you back at Kingston Park as quickly and as safely as we possibly can. And we're looking forward to that day. But for tonight, thank you very much. Thank you to our three panel guests, to Mick, to Semore, and to Dean. Thank you very much indeed for coming on, guys. An awful lot of work's gone on behind the scenes to make this happen as well. So to Katie and to Mel and to Helen in particular, who's facilitated all the to-ins and throw-ins for everyone who's come on tonight. And Ward Hadaway, who very, very kindly sponsored our event as well. I hope you've enjoyed it. Fingers crossed we'll get back to doing it live pretty soon, but I'm sure if we don't, we'll have room for another fans forum on a virtual perspective very shortly. But enjoy your week. Fingers crossed we'll see you back soon. And once again, thanks to our guests and thanks to you for joining in as well. Take care. Good night.